My name is Tim Lancaster, and this is my story. I guess I want to begin a few years back. I was walking across a flat in Mexico, bone fishing, a thing that my friend and I love to do. And I was extremely tired. Just couldn't seem to motivate myself to make it even back to the car. Once I got back to the car, I put my fly rod into the car and my case that I had with my flies, and stepped away from the car and dropped to the ground. My friend, realizing that, who was with me, Jim, realizing that in all probability, I was just a shy person and was going to the bathroom somewhere private, did not realize that I'd collapsed. And then I finally pulled myself up to the passenger door. And he looked at me and he said, "What happened?" And I told him I passed out. I took the next day off for fishing, couldn't quite figure out what was going on. And I realized that my position that I had with the company that I was with just wasn't going to work out. And so after some harassment from my boss, I wrote a pretty lengthy letter of resignation. Then I returned home, and the one thing my friend noticed was that all the way home, I pretty much slept. As it would be, Ed called once I got back, our worship pastor, and he said, "Hey, can you run sound Sunday?" This is on Friday, and I said, "No problem." I got up Sunday morning and went to the front to have a cup of coffee and tried to make it to the back just to go to the bathroom, and couldn't even do that. Was completely out of breath. So I went back out to the front and laid on the couch, and I remember telling Jackie, "Call Ed. I'm not going to make it today." Still unsure of what was going on, the next day she said, "You got to go to the immediate care." So I went to the immediate care and happened to be present with a friend of mine that was Dr. Brunswick, and he said, "Where have you been?" And I said, "Well, down in Mexico." And he said, "I think you got hepatitis down there. I know that's what my wife did." And he said, "You certainly have a lot of the signs of that with the fatigue and all the lack of breath." And I said, "Okay." He said, "Let me do some blood tests." The next morning, I went home and rested, and the next morning, Tori happened to be there with us, my daughter, and she answered the phone, my phone, and said, "It's Dr. Brunswick." And he said, "Stop whatever you're doing right now and get to the hospital." So I went up to the hospital and barely making it in, and the gal took my name down, Tim Lancaster. And she looked at me and she said, "I can't do any more. I got to get you oxygen." And ran out and got oxygen tank for me to start breathing again. She had recorded me down below 80. And she said, "You're awful pale, too, on top of that." And so they admitted me and put me into the emergency room. I called, of course, Jackie and my family, and also called a friend of mine, Greg, who is a physician. And he came up and was with me. And he said, "Yeah, something is definitely wrong." And I remember as Dr. Edmonds came in there and examined me, they actually gave me 2 transfusions of blood at that time. He said, "The blast is really high." Now, I'm not sure what those terms meant at that time, but I knew it was pertaining to white blood cells and red blood cells. And went up to the room, and at 8 o'clock that evening, he walked in and said, "I'm going to write this on the board. You have acute myeloid leukemia." And I said, "Okay." And he looked over at Jackie and she said, "Okay." And he said, "Just okay?" He said, "I expected crying and weeping and all that, but no, it's okay. We have a God that will take care of us." So at that time, we were transferred to OHSU to where I would do chemotherapy and eventually get a stem cell transplant. So in 2017, in the matter of 1 year, I had lost my career, had lost my health, and even lost my pickup as my son rolled it in an accident. Fortunately, he was safe. And we lost our daughter's car, who also had a head-on collision at the same time. It was an amazing year in 2017, and a need to definitely, above all else, put our faith in Jesus Christ and into the great physician. And so we did. Then came 2018. I believe I can remember actually sitting on the side of the bed trying to recover after stem cell transplant and doing pretty good, but not being able to catch my breath. And despite all of that, Jackie said, "Do you want to go to the emergency room?" And I said, "Yes." Despite all of that, I tried my best to get out of my bed and to the car, and I couldn't move. I just sat there. And so she finally called an ambulance. They got me up to the hospital, and they thought it was pneumonia. In hindsight, I think it was a pulmonary embolus, and which led eventually to being comatose and intubated for about 2 weeks at OHSU in critical care. They didn't think I would even make it out of that. And as Dr. Buck came in and talked to the family, they said, "You better prepare. He's got 3 weeks, no more." Once again, I was with that 3-week deadline that was the end of life. And I can remember in the hospital room, although I was unconscious, being in almost a pure white room that was just incredible and so peaceful to be in, that I was just laying there and relaxing. And I heard this voice say, "Stay or go." And I remember recognizing that voice as the voice of my Lord. And I said, "I want to stay for my family." And I can remember eventually recovering. I'd lost my ability to walk, my ability to move and even feed myself. And yet I recovered from that. And I can remember coming back to church for the first time, and Troy spoke on the importance of attendance in coming to church and being present. And I thought, man, I miss this so much. And I think that day in particular, I came to realize that my family is not just those that are blood relatives, but my family are these people that are my brothers and sisters in the Lord. And so from that day on, I had a total new perspective of church and a total new perspective of what we need to do in worshiping our God together. From that point on, I think I realized that there's much more to life than just trying to make a living, trying to have a successful career, and then trying to build yourself up. Life is all about building up Jesus Christ. And I hope when someday I do come to that point, and you look back on my life, you can say, he was one who built up Jesus Christ.